I'm Helen Burney. I'm the Director of Male Sexual and Reproductive Medicine at Indiana University, and I'm also the Andrology Fellowship Director there. So my practice is entirely men's health, and today I'm going to talk about testosterone and prostate cancer. So just by a show of hands, how many of you routinely prescribe testosterone to patients of yours? Okay, great. How many routinely prescribe testosterone to patients with a history of prostate cancer? All right, a little less. So we have the right talk today. So these are my disclosures. None are related to this talk. And these are my 3 testosterone molecules at home that you'll see a lot of pictures of throughout the week. So many of us see patients in the office and they come in asking about starting testosterone therapy. And they have symptoms and they feel awful. And maybe you're comfortable prescribing testosterone therapy. But what happens when that person sitting across from you has a history of prostate cancer? And they're asking you about starting testosterone therapy. And they say, well, doc, I've read all these things about it. And I heard that testosterone and prostate cancer is really bad. It's like the devil. And I've heard that it's like pouring gasoline on fire. And I'm going to make the prostate cancer spread. Well, this is a really common belief. And it's one that many people still believe today. So where did this concept start? I mean, who told us that testosterone was bad in prostate cancer? Well, it actually originated from a paper written in 1941 by Dr. Charles Huggins and Clarence Hodges titled Studies on Prostatic Cancer. Dr. Huggins actually won a Nobel Prize in 1966 for his research where he concluded that cancer of the prostate is activated by testosterone injections. Now, he stated that giving testosterone to men with metastatic prostate cancer caused a rise in acid phosphatase. However, only 3 men in total received testosterone injections for 14 days, and only 2 men had results reported, and 1 had previously been castrated and androgen deprived. His conclusion was based on 1 patient, 1 non-castrated patient who was treated for 14 days. So this entire premise that testosterone is bad in men with prostate cancer is based on a paper in 1941 based on 1 patient. All right, well, what do the guidelines say that can help guide us and give us some direction? Well, the European Urology Association guidelines state that it is an absolute contraindication to give testosterone therapy to men with locally advanced or metastatic prostate cancer. However, they don't mention prostate cancer in active surveillance or that treated. The AUA came out with our own testosterone therapy guideline in 2018, and they recommend that clinicians should inform patients of the absence of evidence linking testosterone therapy to the development of prostate cancer, and that patients with a history of prostate cancer should be informed that there's inadequate evidence to support the risk-benefit ratio. So let's take a dive into the literature and let's see what's actually out there. Well, when you look, you actually see that the available evidence suggests that testosterone treatment does not increase prostate cancer risk. In fact, PSA is an androgen-dependent molecule. That means that you need testosterone in order to make PSA. If your testosterone level is so low that you can't make PSA, when we're routinely following and checking patients for PSA, you have a falsely low PSA that you're looking at. In fact, we have a lot of data that shows low testosterone levels are associated with higher rates of prostate cancer, more advanced prostate cancer grade, stage, and volume, as well as observational studies suggesting that men taking testosterone did not have an increased risk of developing prostate cancer. A large longitudinal study evaluating over 10,000 men also found no association between androgen levels and prostate cancer risk. So what's the data we have on patients in testosterone therapy after a radical prostatectomy? Well, this was a nice study from Dr. Kira's group out of Baylor, and they looked at testosterone replacement therapy in post-prostatectomy patients. They had 103 hypogonadal patients, where 25% of these guys had high-risk prostate cancer. All were treated with transdermal gels, and they were followed for just over 2 years. Biochemical recurrence occurred in 4% of the testosterone group and 16% of the control group. And they concluded that testosterone therapy does not appear to increase cancer recurrence rates, even in men with high-risk prostate cancer. Dr. Mulhall's group came out looking at testosterone therapy after radical prostatectomy in low, intermediate, or organ-confined prostate cancer. This was a study of over 5,000 men, and they followed them, and they found that biochemical recurrence rates at 5 years or 2% in the testosterone therapy group and 2% in those not taking testosterone. In fact, while it was non-significant, they found a decreased risk, almost a protective effect of biochemical recurrence associated with using testosterone after a radical prostatectomy. And biochemical recurrence rates were higher in the no testosterone therapy group during this time period. Now, this is a study from Indiana out of our men's health group, and we presented this at AUA, but we've also already submitted this for publication. And we looked at over 700 guys who had high risk, non-organ confined prostate cancer. And we followed them for a median follow-up about 49 months. And median time to biochemical recurrence was about 10 months. And we found here as well, patients in the low testosterone not treated group had the highest rates of biochemical recurrence. And we concluded that our data suggests that testosterone therapy in men with high-risk prostate cancer does not increase the rates of or time to biochemical recurrence. But what about data on active surveillance? Well, we look at Mukherjee's study again here at looking a retrospective study, 13 hypogonadal patients on active surveillance for over a year. They were biopsied every year. 14 biopsies showed no cancer, no local prostate cancer progression or distant disease was observed. And they stated that testosterone in men with untreated prostate cancer was not associated with progression, and that this longstanding prohibition should really be looked at again. Then we had the oncologic outcomes of testosterone therapy for men on active surveillance with prostate cancer. And this was the largest population-based study looking out of the SEER Medicaid data from Jim Hu's group. And it was over 6,600 patients with many, about 167 active surveillance, followed for 5 years on testosterone therapy. And they looked at oncologic outcomes, they conversion to active treatment, and even prostate cancer-specific mortality and overall mortality. And again, testosterone therapy was not associated with conversion to active therapy or prostate cancer progression, and it was not associated with overall mortality. In fact, they concluded that testosterone therapy for men on active surveillance did not increase risk of conversion to active therapy or worsen mortality. No study that I've showed and no study in the literature shows an increase in prostate cancer staging or progression. And you could say, all right, Helen, but none of those studies were well-designed randomized controlled trials until there was. And we came out with the Traverse trial from the New England Journal of Medicine in 2023, and they looked at over 5,200 men. And the question in the sub-analysis was, does testosterone replacement therapy in men with hypogonadism increase the risk of high-grade or any prostate cancer or adverse prostate cancer events? So they looked at a lot of safety endpoints with the prostate, incidence of cancer, high-grade cancer, acute urinary retention, changes in PSA, or new invasive treatments for BPH. And here again, looking at high-grade, 5 in the testosterone therapy group, 3 in the placebo group. Any prostate cancer, 12 in the testosterone therapy group and 11 in the placebo group. And even looking at secondary prostatic safety endpoints, there was no significant difference between groups. There was an increase in PSA from baseline in the patients in the testosterone group, but we already expect this, right? Because PSA is an androgen-dependent molecule. So if you don't have testosterone and you give it, you're going to see a rise in PSA. They concluded in middle-aged and older men with hypogonadism, incidences of high-grade or any prostate cancer or prostatic event was low and did not differ significantly between groups. So I challenge you to think of this data when you have a patient that comes into your office with a history of prostate cancer and he's asking if he can start testosterone therapy because he's symptomatic and he feels awful. So I prescribe a lot of testosterone, and I prescribe a lot of testosterone to patients with prostate cancer in my practice. And I'm often asked, how do I do this? So with the last couple minutes of this talk, I'm going to go over how I do it and hopefully set up a model that you can follow on Monday. So testosterone therapy can be safely prescribed in appropriately selected men with prostate cancer. Every patient that comes in my office gets a full workup, a medical and a physical history. I'm going to review their risk factors. Why do they have low testosterone? Do they have obstructive sleep apnea, diabetes? And then I'm going to get labs on them. Because I'm a men's health expert, I'm going to get all of these labs on every patient every time because it's going to help me guide my practice and what testosterone modality I want to use. But at a minimum, you should get a total testosterone and an LH. I also get hemoglobin A1C and lipid panels because we know low testosterone is a marker for increased overall mortality. And so these are kind of objective markers that I look at as well. Labs are always done early morning before 11 a.m. and they're fasting. I give everyone an extensive discussion about appropriate counseling. Every patient that comes in gets a discussion about risks and benefits of testosterone, and I let them know that the guidelines say there's no long-term safety data on the use of testosterone therapy in men, but that I'm happy to prescribe it. But if we prescribe it, I'm going to follow you really closely. I am going to monitor you for life every 3 to 6 months while you're on testosterone therapy. And then I monitor them. If their PSA rises, I tell them to expect. I say, if it goes up, I'm going to recheck your PSA in 2 to 4 weeks, depending on if you have high risk or intermediate risk prostate cancer. And if it's still elevated, we're going to have a discussion about whether we stop this and I refer you back for imaging or with your urologic oncologist or your radiation oncologist, and where we go from there. I'm often asked, when do you start it? Well, now, luckily, many people in my practice at IU, if they're already on testosterone therapy and they get diagnosed with prostate cancer, we keep them on the testosterone therapy. And the reason for that is we follow patients with prostate cancer with PSA. And if I take them off of the testosterone therapy, it's going to falsely lower their PSA. So I don't know that I'm getting an accurate PSA that I'm following. If they come in and they have never been on testosterone therapy, if they're low, intermediate, or high-risk prostate cancer, if their PSA is undetectable at that 12-week visit, I feel comfortable starting them on testosterone therapy. Again, assuming they have no plans for ADT or radiation therapy or something else, and we go over the counseling risks and benefits before we do it. The same as for anyone on a history of radiation therapy. 12 weeks post-op or post-procedure, I'm going to go ahead and start them on it. Now, again, I monitor these guys really closely. So we have a discussion. I'm going to get baseline labs, and then we start them on testosterone therapy. I get repeat labs drawn 4 weeks after initiation of testosterone therapy. And that's so that I know right away, do I see any changes in numbers? How are they feeling? Are they getting symptom improvement from being on the testosterone? And usually, if it's injections or it's enclomiphene, I'm going to get labs 4 weeks. For injections, it's the day before their 4th injection because I want to know what's their trough level, what's their lowest level, and I'm going to titrate it based on that. If it's Testapel, I'm going to get labs at 2 weeks and 10 weeks. So I see a peak and I see a trough, and I'm going to follow them with that. And then again, if PSA rises, I repeat the PSA in 2 weeks to a month, depending on what high-risk prostate cancer or intermediate they had. And if it's still elevated, we consider stopping. It's a shared decision-making. I involve the urologic oncologist or their medical or radiation oncologist, and we all decide. And I have many patients that have metastatic prostate cancer that we continue with testosterone therapy at the guidance of a shared decision-making between all of his care providers. Because for many people, quality of life is more important than quantity. There's multiple modalities for testosterone replacement therapy. Any of these you can choose based on the patient's insurance coverage, what their preference is, what they're comfortable with. Some people are very uncomfortable with needles. What I traditionally, my kind of two go-tos are either Clomid or enclomiphene and testosterone cypionate in my prostate cancer patients. So for testosterone cypionate, I start my prostate cancer patients at a lower dose than I would someone who doesn't have prostate cancer. So I start them at 0.3 or 60 milligrams every week. And then we get repeat labs drawn in 4 weeks after they've started the injection therapy. You're aiming for that mid-tier quartile per the AUA guidelines, somewhere between 450 and 650. If it's a little above that, that's okay because I'm checking their objective markers. I'm making sure their hematocrit isn't elevated. I'm looking at their PSA. I'm looking at their estrogen levels and making sure they don't have any signs or symptoms or side effects that are bothersome. And again, I can't, emphasize enough, even though many of these men with prostate cancer are older than 45, it's still really important to ask patients about fertility. So anyone that's interested in future fertility, do not prescribe them exogenous testosterone. We have many other therapies that they can use, like Clomid or HCG or anastrozole. So always important to ask that. I prescribe a lot of testosterone. I think testosterone is very important hormone for both men and women to have normal levels so that it restores our sense of health. It helps prevent diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and improves overall mortality rates. As urologists, we really are the gatekeepers of men's health. And so it's prudent and important for us to understand the data about testosterone therapy and to understand the data on testosterone therapy and prostate cancer. We need to have discussions with patients. We need to talk to them about the risk, side effects, and make an educated guess so that they can know what the expectations are and that they're set up for success. So my take-home message to you today is that the current data does not show an increased risk of biochemical recurrence in men with prostate cancer on testosterone therapy, that it can be safely prescribed in the appropriately selected men with a history of prostate cancer, and that counseling is paramount. You got to counsel every patient prior to starting testosterone therapy. Selection and timing is crucial. If they haven't been on it after that 12-week mark, monitor it closely in these patients. We're going to follow them for life every 3 to 6 months while they're on testosterone therapy. And then there's multiple modalities. You pick it based on their preferences. And if their PSA rises, you recheck it and then discuss cessation, referral, risks, and benefits, and you go from there. Thank you very much.